KnockBack, the retro and nostalgia podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to KnockBack. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my brother Dagan Mama Cass Moriarty. Dagan, thank you for joining me today. How are you, my friend?
What's up, Freckles? I got you first with the freckles.
Yeah. You're coming in a little hot, actually. See if your audio's up a little bit, Dag.
Okay, let me see.
Up left corner. We're doing it live.
How's that? Does that sound better to you?
Yeah, that's better. That's better. We're doing it live. How are you, my friend?
All right. Everything's good, man. I just had, we're recording in the AM hours, the wee hours. Just had a bowl of cereal.
Oh, nice. I just woke up 15 minutes ago, so.
Nice. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, just rolled right out of bed.
Yeah, roll out of bed, right into the chair. Let's go.
Yeah. Did my note taking and all.
You could do this.
Right. I did my notes and all of this yesterday and got everything done. Usually I like to do all that right before the show, kind of get everything fresh, but I knew that I was going to be waking up. I woke up 10:45, very early for me.
Very responsible, though. I like that you got the notes out of the way. You knew what the lay of the land was going to look like.
Right.
Dude, we're not even going to go on a huge thing because we're eager to get into our topic today, but I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to make a bold statement. Honey Nut Cheerios, best cereal all time.
Yeah.
Right?
I can see that.
Makes sense, doesn't it? Now, we have to go back to our breakfast cereal episode many moons ago. I'm not even sure what I said then, but that's my opinion right now. And I'll tell you this is an interesting little tidbit. I know since I've been on this better health initiative, right? I've been eating regular bland Cheerios for breakfast for months now. I just can't take it anymore. They're just, I think back to Cheerios. They're just, there's no taste. It's like that first solid baby food when the babies graduate from the, from whatever that pudding is in their baby food jars, that disgusting mush. And then that's their first like handheld solid food. Leave it for the babies. The regular Cheerios, can we do something with those? I mean, this is the thing. This was my idea. Cheerios represent the best and the worst cereals in the cereal aisle. Pretty drastic feat. That's not
really
easy to do.
That's a fascinating thing to say. And I feel like there's something fascinating about you come into this world, right? Yeah, right. Dredge says this actually, like babies are born in the same building that people go to pass away. That's a Dredge line. And so too do we eat. We come into the world eating mush and nothing, and then we die. And we eat mush and we eat nothing as we atrophy, and it's full circle. Very
irony.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you're doing well, Dig. I mean, you look great. Dad, I think Dad's the one that said you were looking really good.
Yeah.
And, now I'm still trying to get buff. I'm going to punch you through a fucking wall when I see
There's
you.
no question.
But
turn into a full-on Marine over there.
But by the way, I bought new protein powder. So I was trying this protein powder. I like it, but I was like, I bet you there's better protein powder. So I went and tried another protein powder. Horrible.
Oh,
and I was like, I was actually, I cannot even believe people drink this. And then I went immediately back to the other powder.
What do you do with it? Put it in a shake or something?
Yeah, you put in like water, 10 ounces of water, and you just shake it, and then you just drink it.
Water.
It's just whey protein. Yeah.
Okay.
And
what can you do with that to make it taste?
So good? I do a few sets of lifting, and then I run for like 30 minutes, and then I just drink it.
What do you run outside or on the treadmill?
On the tread. Well, I have an elliptical.
The elliptical, right?
In fact, I had a run yesterday because we forgot poop bags on the walk with our dog. So I had to run back to the house. But I was like, oh my God, like it's totally fine. Like I had no wind problems or anything, like running back and forth to where we were. But I was like, man, I'm slow, because my knees can't take it. The elliptical is like a cheat kind of in some way. It's very difficult, but yeah.
You didn't leave the poop. You ran back, got a bed. That's a neighborhood. That's what do you call it? An upstanding neighbor.
I'm not a fucking dirtbag, dude.
No,
first of all,
dude.
There are times where I've been on walks and I'm out of bags, or we run out of bags if both dogs are with us, and then I have to walk all the way back to where we were when we get home. I bring them back, and then I go all the way back to where I was to pick up.
That's huge. Yeah. That's huge. I'm proud of you for that.
Some dirtbag shit going on in this neighborhood. I can't be contributing to that.
No. Can't besmirch the Moriarty name with those kind of antics, man. Come on.
Well, let's get into it, Dig. But before we do, I just want to say two quick things.
Sure.
Number one, Lost Season 2 is what we're going to do today. And I learned something about myself when I was watching the show, which is I'm a very stubborn, as people know, and I say it all the time, hand note taker. I just am very stubborn about it. And so with this show, I was just, kind of watching and whatever. And I know the show pretty well, so I just take notes later. But with that in mind, I went and played The Last of Us Part 1 all the way through on PS5. And Micah and I did a spoiler cast for that, which goes live soon. Actually, by the time this goes live, it'll be live, I think, the next day. And
sick.
And I just took all my notes on my computer while I was playing because I was using a collectibles guide, where it just says like, these are the collectibles in this chapter, here are where they are. So you know where to go and get them. I just want to play through the game once and be done. So I get the platinum and just move on.
Yeah.
And so I had this other window open for the first time, really, where I was typing notes and I'm like, this is so much easier. I was like it was hysterical. I had like a thought, and instead of it taking like by the time I get to writing the end of the thought, I'm like, I forgot what I was even saying. I actually was just able to type it. And I don't know, people used to make fun of me all the time at IGN because I was so fastidious with handwritten notes. And I still will be, but it's kind of opened my eyes to maybe just a stubbornness.
You turned a corner. Yeah, the stubbornness, right. Set in your ways, sure. Yeah, but that's huge. That's a nice step forward for you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say real quick is that we're recording this right before week 1 begins Sunday. Week 1 began on Thursday, technically, for football. And I just want to point out how much better my life becomes during football season. It's true. It's just life becomes almost worth living during football season.
You have that weekly light at the end of the tunnel.
I love it. Thursday night, Sunday, Monday night, and then before and then the podcasts and all that. I love the NFL and I love football, and I just am so pleased, though the Jets will probably finish 3-14 as usual. Just generally excited for it all to come, because everyone's asking me this year, like, what do you think about the Jets? The Jets actually are probably better than they've been in the last few years, but the AFC, the conference, is so good. I keep telling people the losses have to come from somewhere. Where do you think they're going to come from? They're not going to come from the Chiefs.
Well said.
They're not going to come from the Bills. They have to come from someone. Not everyone can be good. So I'm going to give you guys a hint. I'm going to give you a small hint on where those losses might come from this year.
Sports analyst Colin Moriarty. And you look forward to, so I said weekly, but you look forward to, it doesn't have to be a Jets game. It doesn't have to be one of the weekly Jets games. It could be any football.
Yep, football is the only sport, NFL football is the only sport where I'll watch any game that's on.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anyone. Yeah.
And
typically
sense.
I try to go, I have Sunday tickets so I can watch them all. And I typically try, if the Jets aren't on, I typically try to watch the strangest game. Like the game that like the game that's probably wouldn't be on TV, like Washington and Cleveland or something, like some random thing like that. It's like, all right, I'm watching this fucking horrible game because I want it, because no one else is. All right. Oh, Dave, give me 1 sec.
Yeah, sure.
I left my notebook in the bedroom.
Go grab that notebook
for like 10 seconds.
Go grab it, my friend. I'll entertain the troops here. Or Ben will cut it out, one or the other. Let's see. What can I entertain you guys with? I'll put on my glasses. I don't know what that's going to do, but I can't put on my glasses with my headphones. How does that look? That look good? What do you guys want to talk about? Nothing? Talk about Lost Season 2. Here he comes. He's coming back. He's back in the chair with his notebook.
Sorry about that.
We were talking shit about you while you were gone.
That's okay. That's okay.
Pop and smack.
At least you weren't doing smack.
Yeah, Charlie.
Yeah, exactly. All right, my friend. So Lost Season 2. Let's get into it.
Here we go.
This aired on ABC in 2005 and 2006, 24 episodes. I was a junior in college, peak Northeastern Colin during the height of Lost. Brings me back. As I did last time for the first season, people liked it. I kind of split my approach between characters and mysteries. And we don't have to go through all of the characters again like we did last time. We can, but certainly we should introduce the new characters and talk about anyone that needs updates. And then there's probably like a half dozen or so mysteries that we should get into. So we'll split it up in that way. But before we do, I wanted to read this one thing from Nick Filaro, and then I want to pitch it over to you to talk about your experience.
Okay.
But this is clarification just about Matthew Fox. Now, we were talking about where is Matthew Fox? What does he do? Why doesn't he do anything? And he says, "Hey, Moriarty Bros." I remember what he's about to say, and I was like, "Oh yeah." And apparently he was involved in it. He says, "On the previous episode, you guys were talking about how Matthew Fox has kind of fallen out of acting roles. Here's the scoop. Back in 2011, I was at a bachelor party where I live in the city of Cleveland, Ohio. We had a private party bus and we were partaking in many of Cleveland's finest establishments. Very late that night, the party bus was parked outside of a club in downtown Cleveland. A very drunk man tried to force his way onto the bus. He even shoved and punched our driver. He then received a few blows from the driver and punches from a couple of guys on the bus. It was quite the scene. Police got involved. The man got arrested. We found out the next day the man was Matthew Fox. What? Turns out he was filming a movie in Cleveland. Since then, he has been in and out of rehab, which may be part of the disappearance from major Hollywood roles. Sorry for the lengthy comment. Thank you both for your amazing work. I didn't even look this up to really verify it, but I remember this.
What?
Like something like this being talked about. And I had looked up something else about Matthew Fox, which is that apparently, where is it in my notes here? Yeah, apparently Dominic Monaghan had said some shit about him too. Like while they were filming, like towards the end, like he was kind of on the outs with people even on the show towards the end, I think.
What was it? Alcohol abuse problems?
Presumably, yeah. Who knows? So I just wanted to throw that out there. It explains a little bit about what we were talking about last time. With that out of the way, though.
But Kyle, nobody on that nobody on that bus said, "Wait, that's Jack. Let him join the party." He wasn't in disguise. I mean, Matthew Fox looks like, it's like Matthew Fox. He doesn't look like a normal human being. It's like a younger George Clooney stepping on the bus. It's fucking Jack. It's Charlie. I'm talking about.
I would from back in the day. What was their name? Charlie Salinger in Party of Five.
Good call.
I'm fucking nerdy with that shit
too.
It is a great last name, and it's true that I was addicted to TV because of my sister Dana. So
yes.
Excuse me. I have this new pen.
How's it going? Not too good.
Oh man, blowing it out my ass right now. This weed pen I'm talking about, not even a writing pen. Two different things.
Got both. I can't even tell the difference. Look at that.
Dig, Lost season 2.
Oh,
this brings me back. Now, I watched this on DVD, but it was like right after it came out. Season 3 is when I started watching it on TV. So this was I was looking this up. This DVD set sold 500,000 copies in the United States in one day.
That's insane. Insane.
It really lines up with what I remember about the show, which I was like, this show was fucking huge. I just don't think if you were there, like if you're a little younger, you don't remember it. It's really true. So, and I feel like Lost season 2, as I remember, it was the best season, but it's funny. Things are happening where I'm like, I don't remember this, or I totally forgot about this. Like the map with the question mark or Mrs. Clue or something. I hadn't thought about any of these people or any of these things. It's fun to go back into it, but I'm curious, what do you think of Lost season 2 now that you've watched it through?
I really enjoyed this season. This is where it got me. I remember texting you early on a couple of weeks ago when I started watching and said, you know what, they got me. It just, I don't know what it was. I guess we got the introductions over with. It becomes a little more grounded and a little less soap opera-y, but I really enjoyed it. Dude, I can't even believe how much transpires over the course of this season. They cover so much ground. So much is done. They get from such a drastic place once they arrive at Z from A that I actually had to go back and start rewatching from the beginning just to remember the starting point, the launching point of the season, because there's so much that happens. It's really, really complex. A lot of characters, a lot of drama. They cover a lot of ground with the story. So there's really a lot to say. It feels like I remember doing episodes with you where we talk about like we did the whole series of Mad Men in 1 2 or 3 hour episode. This one season of the show feels like that. Yeah. It's like, wow, there is a lot that takes place and just a lot to discuss. And, hopefully we could do it justice. I really enjoyed it. And, the other thing I'll say from the outset is really struck with how bold they are. not just with the story points and the flashbacks and what's transpiring on the island, but with killing off characters. I was very an almost Sopranos-esque tone with not just kind of putting the sentimentality aside and just saying whatever happens. God, I think the realism was ramped up a little bit in this season, if you would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. The stakes, as it were.
Stakes, definitely.
And the mysteries, of course, too. I'm curious at the top. And it's been hard for me to decouple from It's funny. I don't remember very much. So like the specifics of what everything is, it's like kind of lost on me at this point, except for overarching things. But I've tried to stay out of looking anything up because I don't want anything to be spoiled. I'm trying to kind of absorb it again in that way. So I'm curious at the top from where we are now, having seen these 2 seasons, what do you make of it? Like, what do you think it is? What do you think is happening?
It's so hard to say. I knew we were going to have this discussion. I knew this would come up. And I have to say also, still almost completely unspoiled. My only hitch with this season was at the very end, I was a little confused about the status of Mr. Echo. And I was like, I don't understand. Is he dead? Because they show Charlie's okay. He's talking to Claire on the beach. There's a little thawing between those two, but I feel like they left Mr. Echo in the lurch. So I had to sneak ahead to season 3 just to see if he was around still, and he was. So that's the only thing that was spoiled for me.
Okay, fair enough.
I think for me, Kyle, where I am right now at the end of season 2, it seems to me like this Dharma Initiative, this foundation or this corporation or whatever's happened, this research company or whatever, this scientific research company, it seems like there's something insidious going on with this corporation. It seems like an evil scientific corporation story to me at this point. That's what makes the most sense. We have all the little clues. We have the hatch, the original sort of facility where Desmond is. Then we find the Pearl, which was sort of the observation hatch. And then we have little clues like the pneumatic tube of notebooks just going out and just sitting there in the middle of in a pile.
I love
in the
that.
middle of the
I
jungle.
fucking love it. It's
the imagery in this season is just iconic. The further I go, the nice thing about this show is the further I get in episode by episode, the more I realize why it was so beloved and why it was so important and why people are on the edge of their seats week to week. There is no way I don't have the patience. I don't think back in the day I would have the patience to wait week after week, just with the way you're slowly spoon-fed mysteries, and then for every mystery solved, there's another 2. That it's a brilliant formula, but one that definitely takes a modicum of patience. And I really feel for the audience, the 2005 and 2006 audience, in this case, season 2. I don't know if I could have done it, man. I think it would have driven me mad, to be honest.
It was maddening. That's why I was glad I got to watch at least these not live. What's frustrating is that, and it's what you said with these 42-minute episodes or 45 minutes or whatever, is that they only introduce so much. And there are really some episodes where you're like, you didn't learn anything. Like you learn something about a character or something happens, but I really only care about the Dharma Initiative at this point in the show, like more than anything, and just the nature of the island. Like it reminds me a little bit of The Walking Dead in my complaints with that, which is that it becomes and it's always really about the people. And I'm like, but I don't care about any of you. I care about what's going on in the world. You're a far cry from Ellie and from Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson playing in this world or whatever. I don't really care so much about you. I care about, and that's why within the first season of The Walking Dead, when they go to the CDC, that's actually probably the coolest part of the show that I ever saw. And I watched it for 4 seasons, I think. I was like, wow, they're really trying to figure out like what happened and all this. But otherwise it's about like, where's my son Carl and all this shit. But I just can't take it anymore. So the same thing is kind of true here, where there are a few characters that I'm deeply interested in. Obviously Locke, of course, Jack, Sawyer, others, Hurley because of the numbers and his intricate relationship with them, and all of the rest. But really I want to know about the island. And so I'll just say right off the top that what I believed at this time, and I don't even really remember how my feeling evolves and adapts, but I remember after watching the second season, this is what I thought, which was, I was like, this is Purgatory. A scientific company has figured out where it is or somehow accessed it. And because there are a few things like the planes are making drops right on the island. I almost said his actual name, Henry Gale, which you don't think you know it yet. Henry Gale tells them to follow a specific bearing and they will be rescued.
Yes.
There's a boat at the end with Penny hired looking for an electromagnetic readings or whatever. And they find the thing there, and the Dharma Initiative. So I mean, obviously you can't explain very much of it at this point, and I don't even really know what else I would know to support it at this point, because it's been so long since I watched the rest of it. But that's what I remember thinking at the time. There's massive Catholic imagery, not Christian, and that's something I really think is important to differentiate between. It's Catholic,
absolutely,
and that's Purgatory. Because Purgatory is in other doctrines as well, but that's a Catholic doctrine. That's not even in the Bible. That's just like one of those random things Catholic people made up, along with many other things that we made up, right?
I love this theory, by the way. This is fantastic.
And it seems like in time, one of our favorite sayings, in time immemorial, different societies or groups have found this place and been caught in it in some way. You find out that the pulse, when it says like, the process is breaking down, when they're at the Pearl and they find the readout, they will match that up with Desmond going crazy and not hitting the button or whatever. Or actually, no, they match that up with him figuring things out, I think, and getting back too late, right?
Yep.
And so the boat, like Black Rock in the first season, is hundreds of years old. The hot air balloon comes more recently. The plane was crashed, but I would argue the plane crash looked like it was even older than it indicated, as if time was playing with it a little bit. And so I don't know. That was my theory at the time, was that like, this is Purgatory, and it's me being manipulated somehow. Like people are in the space between, and all of these people on the island are gray. None of them are truly good at all. But none of them are really truly bad either. I think the closest to being bad right now is Michael.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure.
But they're all lying to each other. They all keep secrets. They all have these deep, dark, fucked up pasts, and things happen to them, or they dealt with things in a weird way, massive loss and pain and sacrifice. So that was my theory. And that remains my theory right now.
I love that. I think if the show went in that direction, it would feel very Twilight Zone, and I would love that. I mean, that would be, and it does make sense too in a realistic manner, because who survives a plane crash? You know what I mean? Like it's a friggin' 747 or whatever it was. That, that makes sense. Yeah, that would be neat. That would be really cool. And there is a lot of Catholic and religious imagery. I mean, the entire thing, it seemed to me by the end of season 2, was kind of an allegory for religion and faith, with entering the numbers into the computer every 108 minutes. Mm-hmm. It was like, if it seemed to me like religion, and I could speak to my own experience with Catholicism specifically and religion in general, which is like doing it, right? And we've talked about this on past episodes. Doing it doesn't cost you anything. Not doing it may cost you everything.
Pascal's wager.
Exactly. And that's the exact thing with sitting down at that computer and entering those numbers every 108 minutes. And the whole thing with Locke believing, now he doesn't believe, but Desmond is the one who kind of brings him back along and says, no, this is the whole thing is about faith and going through the motions, whether that's prayer, general belief, going to church, whatever it is, right? Confession, all of these things happen in this season. So that's really interesting, man. It's funny. The cliffhanger from season to season is always pretty drastic, but it's pretty incredible what they do just from episode to episode, leaving you on tenterhooks and kind of waiting for, with bated breath for the next shoe to drop. It's been a pretty incredible experience. And it, obviously it's lasting the test of time too, 20 years on. So
I also think there's just a lot of literary references, and I think they become more and more and more clear. I mean, I think they're fairly obvious by the second season. They're, turning the screw and all these things, and like look behind it and find the truth behind this book, and this guy's reading this book and Sawyer's reading and I feel like the island itself is almost a Milton reference to Paradise Lost. Like I don't know if a lot of that's true or whatever. I don't know if you're even into Milton, but I just feel like there's a lot. This show is shockingly deep, I think, for a network television show.
Oh man, it's so literary. I mean, the whole thing with Dickens and Desmond waiting to read Our Mutual Friend, and is there a little Dante's Inferno concentric rings of suffering and all that? Who knows what's going on? It kind of seems like that formula too. Like, is something like that at play? I don't know, but I love the questions.
Me too. And I know it gets frustrating to people eventually, and almost becomes a joke with how much they introduce. But I think it's the mystery is what makes it so interesting. Like we said, and I read this, although I felt this beforehand, so I knew I was right, and I was so glad, is that the Lost logo turning and that noise is a Twilight Zone reference. So why wouldn't it be like more of like a Twilight Zone thing? And I just love the idea of this ancient place, like the Egyptian characters. Like what is
hieroglyphics?
That? Right. It's like
the fuck.
And the statue, right, with the foot. And
that thing is crazy.
It's like something's been going on here, and for me, it just seems like it's the space between spaces in some way that they've figured out a way into and out of. Like, some people know how to get into it and out of it, and like Henry Gale says at the end, he's like, "You're never going to come back." But it's like you're not going to be able to figure it out, but it's here. It's obviously here somewhere. And the creepy thing to me is one of the creepy things is when Desmond says, I was sailing due west at 9 knots for 2 weeks, and then I came back here.
That's insane.
Like, what?
That's creepy.
And he's having the most existential crisis, which I think gets into like the whole Jesus stick thing, and how Echo's writing like revelations on it, and all of the revelation on it, and all of that is he thinks the world's over. Like, Desmond thinks that there's nothing left.
Yeah. When
he comes back, which is scary in itself. So all the different experiences they have. But Dave, let's start at the very beginning. Andres wrote into us on Patreon. Remember, you guys can write into us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia, to inquire about our different topics. Grading opening scene to a new season ever, he says. The way it slowly reveals the link to last season's cliffhanger ending is masterfully done. How did you guys feel about it? Dave? Loved that scene. I immediately, when I watched it, I messaged you the Spotify link to Mama Cass's Play Your Own Kind of Music. And I've probably listened to that song 100 times since the show. It's so good, dude. I've been watching her perform it live and all of the rest. It's great. Going on YouTube and all of the rest. I love that. I was so excited for you to see that shot, because I knew you would. I mean, I assume you did, but I knew you would love it. Like the introduction of Desmond and what's inside the hatch, and it's just insane when you find out what's going on in there. I don't think anyone assumed that it was this 1970s apartment with a computer in it over some sort of magnetic anomaly. And I'm wondering what you thought of that first season and the introduction of Desmond and his plight as he has to press the button every 108 minutes.
I mean, I love that anything goes motif with this show. Anything can happen. And I love that really at the end of season 2, still at the tip of this conversation, anything can happen. It's all at play. And I love that formula, because you could be so playful and just have a great time with creating this world and what's next. But yeah, entering the 1970s vibe. I mean, you got me. You got the music. First of all, Needle Drop rights for a Mamas and the Papas song. Not easy to get. So you could see that these guys were at the peak of their power. And just the 70s aesthetic, the avocado green, the 1970s furniture, the wood paneling, the 1970s exercise equipment, that whole, it's a bomb shelter, but it's a 1970s version of this apartment. Even the style, the windows and the lighting, it's all very orange and all very warm. it was just a treat, and I wasn't expecting it. And then little things that I really appreciated, which the show does very well, the nods to other things, like the way the food pantry was very Shining-esque, for instance. I loved all those little playful things that they put in there and that you could notice, and just a level of detail. Super, super fun. And the Desmond character, I mean, along with, for me, probably Mr. Echo, definitely competing with Locke now for very intriguing characters for me. Like maybe even more intriguing than Locke at this point. So, and likable too. I like the Desmond character a lot. The whole brother thing, come on, brother, everything's brother. So fun.
See you in another life, brother.
And dude, we shouldn't forget to say, just the way all these characters are connected at some point, even before the crash of the flight, even before the catastrophe. And then as we go on further in the season, even more connections with more characters are woven in. So what kind of supernatural, mystical things are at play here? Why are these characters' lives so closely intertwined even before this disaster? Dude, so fun.
Good shit, man. It's fun. God, I'm so glad that you got to this point, because I was worried a little bit. When I was watching the first season, I was like, I like this, but it's soapy. It's not, we haven't gotten to the Dharma Initiative stuff yet. So I need him to just get there, and
it was worth it.
I'm glad to hear that. So let's say we're in the Swan. We learn it's one of the Dharma Initiative's hatches, and that there are different ones. You brought up the Pearl before, and there's the Flame and the Arrow and the Staff. One of them is fake, which I love. I mean, that's like one of the great mysteries, which is super neat. It's just a fake door that they guard to make it seem like it's real. And so what did you think about finding the Apple basically style late 70s computer in which every 108 minutes an alarm goes off? And someone and many times in the past decades, two people have lived in this place at a time, pressing that button every 108 minutes. And Desmond, for the last year or so, I think was on his own, right? The Calvin character ties in eventually, but it seemed like, he was on his own because of that, right? They were a partnership. And then, of course, the Calvin character, who also is connected to the whole Iraqi thing. He was a CIA spook in Iraq. Right. The whole Saeed has a past with him, and then this guy pops up in the bunker. It's like, what is the more things are introduced, the more that you end the season with so many questions. A lot of things are satiated, but then so many more questions are opened up. It's insanity. Yeah, dude. It's just, what was your question again? I was just going to wonder, like, what did you think about the computer and seeing the numbers? 108 minutes, of course, is the numbers added to each other.
Oh, shit. I don't think I even realized that.
Yeah, it is. It's 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42 added together.
It's fantastic.
And it seems like you said, it's like this, we don't have all the information. If we had the information in the beginning, what Desmond already knew when they got to the island, then we would have known to never stop pressing the button. But nonetheless, it's this idea of like, what are they doing? What are you pressing this button for? To what end? Why is this happening down here? It's very weird. What did you think about that whole angle of just, and the kind of the horror of being in that situation? You can't sleep for more than that amount of time. You can't go anywhere or do anything. You have to be always going. And it's quite something else to watch.
It's so interesting because it just opens up so many questions. And also, you think about yourself in that situation and you try to troubleshoot, like, how can I do this better? Like, why don't they have a dozen people at the hatch at any given time so they could each take one shift and then they could get like a normal night's sleep? Like, why don't they do it this way? The way they do it in the show paints a better picture for drama. And, it makes you realize, wow, this must be exhausting. And also, what's at play? Is this some Pavlovian thing where it's like testing people at what point will they break and just say, fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore. Maybe this is for nothing. And just, again, sort of testing their faith and their belief in what they're doing. Or what is happening? Is this some type of firewall against some type of potential catastrophe? And we learn by the end of the season, spoilers, that It is. It seemingly is something that they have to do to prevent this electromagnetic anomaly from wreaking havoc. And if they, so in other words, this electromagnetic, I guess, energy builds up, and then this putting in the code every 108 minutes is a release. If you don't release it, it'll just build up, and I guess the world will end. You know, will it? We saw a small example of it when the hatch imploded, right when the swan imploded. So is this what's going to happen to the world if this thing is built up and everything like that? So it seems like an actual thing already. That's another interesting thing, Kyle. They seem to tip their hat and let the cat out of the bag with seemingly big questions, but it's like that. Like they said, okay, they already came down and said, it seems like they're doing this for a reason, right? This is actually some sort of fail-safe that they have to do. And you would think that they would string that mystery along a little further into the next seasons, but it doesn't even matter because there's already new mysteries at play that take the place of that. So, and that's almost like I was questioning, like, wow, characters are pretty expendable. Characters that we thought would be around for a long time, core characters, and then characters that we barely get to know. No one's safe. And it kind of paints this picture of this really horrific world that they're living in where there's no guarantees. But I was also equally surprised in them seemingly not being too precious with their mysteries. You know, like, all right, no, we're already going to answer that one because they know, I think they know in some insidious way that there's already 9,000 mysteries for you to worry about beyond that. So I like that they're not precious and they're not, it makes it feel like it's thoughtfully done. And I supposedly they had some sort of loose blueprint or architectural schematic for how things were going to go. But I found out that they were writing episode, you know, in a detailed basis, episode by episode, and not making it up as they went, but kind of, you know, with this kind of overarching plan, but still kind of like just going episode by episode and kind of figuring it out as they went in a 50% capacity anyway, which kind of surprised me because it does feel pretty thoughtfully done.
Yeah.
All in all.
I think what happened was that someone that's not Carlton Cuse or any of these people, J.J. Abrams, actually came up with the idea for Lost. Then I think it was sold and they developed it. And then that's where the like a short Bible came from and all the rest. But the show becomes notorious for coming off like that. And we'll see if you agree or not when we get there down the line.
That's interesting. I do feel like I worry that it's so good right now that are we at peak Lost? And it's going to be kind of uphill from here. I do wonder. That's my fear. And I guess that's like with anything, right? You're enjoying a good book, watching a good show, a good film. It's like, how can it get any better than this? So I do wonder about that. I'm a little suspicious at this point. Like,
sure.
Is this as good as it gets?
Well, I'm excited because my honest answer in watching it back in the day was it was downhill from here. And I know a lot, I don't want to say a lot, but many people feel that way. But I want to kind of go in with fresh eyes because I feel just as into it right now as I did back then. You know, where it's like I'm ready to go. Like this is good shit. Let's go.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So I don't know what I've encountered. We've done it on the show where I've encountered things where I've liked it differently or more the second time or a different time through. Breaking Bad is a great example when we did that. Where I liked it a lot more when we watched it again than I did the first time. I just wasn't that into it. I don't know why. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe at this point. So attached to the Swan is this idea of the Dharma Initiative, and we finally learn a little bit about this scientific collective in the 70s with their weird orientation videos. What do you think of the Dharma Initiative and their connection to all of this? It seems like they are at the center of the mystery, and I like how they've gone out of their way to put their iconography everywhere, which I think is really cool. It's obviously very good for the show to have that recognizable icon logo, that series of logos that they have. Each hatch has its own logo, but I love how it really is everywhere when you look at it. Even when he's twisting the key at the end and they zoom out, it's a Dharma Initiative logo, and you don't actually see that earlier on when they're around there, which is cool. So what do you make about this initiative, this institute, and what do you think they are? I mean, what do you make of it?
I find this probably the most intriguing aspect of the show so far. What is this corporation, this company, this foundation? And again, like, it does seem like what they're pointing to at the moment by the time we end the season is that this is some sort of shady organization. There's something evil or underhanded going on beneath all this said research, or under the guise of research or science or whatever. There's some sort of evil conglomerate, multinational corporate, Genom Corporation, that type of thing where it's like this multi-tendrilled General Electric, supposedly for the good, but just way too powerful for anybody to keep in check. Is that something going on here? But you would think if it was something like that, which a company like that tends to be a household name, right? Think Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, General Electric, whatever, right? Why did none of these people know about this Dharma Corporation before they crash? So that's another intriguing aspect, is like, all right, it's obviously not this brand name that everybody is aware of, this McDonald's, Coca-Cola type of thing. So it's really interesting, but I really do end the season thinking like this is at the core of the whole situation. This is the company responsible for what's going on. And this whole electromagnetic component is like seemingly sucking in everything into its maw, like it's sucking everything into its jaws. It's the belly of the beast or whatever. So it does seem like that. And then the other thing, I love little components like the grainy 8mm training videos and stuff, but I love them. I think it's awesome the way it's presented and everything like that. But I was left thinking by the end of the season that it would have been really cool if they were animated, and that could be the animator in me, but that would have been really neat. Almost in like a Fallout capacity.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Right.
Fallout. Yeah. Fallout's a perfect example when you find the little Pip-Boy videos, but it's like, they're like ridiculously violent, but it's like him blowing up and like turning into a radiated beast or whatever.
See, that would have been really fun,
yeah.
but maybe showing a little too much, tipping their cap a little too much, or, showing a little too much of like the insidious underneath of the guise of science or whatever. But it's super fun, man. I gotta say, you gotta put something, you planted another idea in my head now with the whole thing of, is this some sort of religious, somewhere this ether between heaven and hell? Is it this sort of purgatory? I don't know. You got me with that one. To be honest with you.
I totally, my theory there is simply that it's like, not that they intentionally, that it's that they found it, or that there's this, over time, this island has actually been a problem or something that a lot of different peoples have experienced. Remember, they find those people in the caves too. The first things they ever find after the smoke monster and all the other stuff are the bodies in the cave. So over time, people have been somehow trapped here. And it seems to me like Dharma Initiative figured out how to get in and out, basically. And they're trying to manipulate it, learn from it, and do all of the rest. Keeping in mind, I think the creepiest thing about it actually is that it's insinuated that they're still very much active. Like the company still exists and is still there because they're dropping shit on the island.
Yes.
Yep.
Very important. Yep.
So they've never shown themselves. They've never even bothered to pick up any of those notebooks. They've never bothered to upgrade any of the equipment and make themselves known. They've obviously at one time were lying about the nature of what the island even was with the shots and the vaccines. We see Kelvin going out over and over again in his outfit. His partner was presumably doing the same thing. They eventually both knew that there was something not, amiss with that. So yeah, a lot of different stuff. And that's why I love the Egyptian characters being present, and the old ship and all of the rest, where it's like, maybe this has just been something that, like, the Dharma Initiative is just the most recent example of someone or something or whatever stumbling upon this place. You can imagine the Black Rock being a ship 400 years ago in a very wide open, unknown Pacific Ocean, and they crash on an island. They never were found. At least that's what they thought. And then what they realized is they just disappeared into history, which is it's good shit. I like that a lot. It's fun. One of the other things, Dig, I wanted to ask you about was the tail. We learn about the tail part of the plane. Over and over again in the first season, they make it clear that the plane split in two. We learn that their experience, they are in a different hatch. And in their hatch, all that were there were Bibles and a few tchotchkes, odds and ends. But out of there, we get Ana Lucia, Mr. Echo, Libby, Cindy, and Bernard. I think those are the 5 characters of consequence that are really introduced. Cindy's kind of killed off. What do you make of learning about the other side of the plane, that they had their own experience, that they're closer, I guess, in proximity to where the others were. So they had some more interactions with them and a much more it was almost like spring break on the front end of the plane compared to what was going on for them. So what did you think about the introduction of these various characters?
It was fun. I mean, it's super fun. It really paints pictures of Lord of the Flies, right? You have these 2 different societies. You have our original cast of survivors. Then you have the tail section of the plane survivors. And this was kind of foreshadowed. Rose was saying that she knows her husband's still alive and she has this feeling. And another reminder of the actual powers of this island. You know, this island is actually has some sort of jurisdiction, some sort of autonomy, almost like a person does. And it was cool to meet these other 2 characters, this other band of survivors, and then the way they come together. I mean, we meet them when Michael, Sawyer, and Jin wash back up to the beach because the raft thing goes awry. They get pulled back to the island, and then they're captured by Mr. Echo and Ana Lucia, and you don't know how it's going to go at first. It's very contentious at the outset, but then they band together, and in the entire thing, in the offing of these 2 groups coming together, and the tail section people coming back to Jack and Kate's camp, Shannon is killed. You know, and that was a tipping point for me earlier in the season where I was like, all right, like this show is not going to be afraid to do things. In fact, Shannon was shot. That whole thing happened so quickly that I was like, all right, she's obviously going to be injured, but she's going to survive. And they didn't hesitate to kill her. I mean, she died in a very unceremonious fashion. And I was like, all right, that sets the tone for what this show is going to do. It really is kind of a display of what they're willing to do in the show, the actions they're willing to take and the characters they're willing to kill off, and the coldness, you know what I mean? That whole thing, that harsh reality thing of it, which is really interesting. So I like the way they brought the 2 groups together, our original survivors and our tail section people, but the way they did it in that very contentious fashion where it was like no one trusted each other, the whole thing with Michael, the entire thing with Saeed, and his vengeance at first, and Ana Lucia not wanting to go to the funeral. And then we meet Mr. Echo. He's a very mysterious, very intriguing person at first. And then, of course, the Libby character and the way they kind of blend in. And, of course, you know, we can't understate the reunion of Rose and her husband, Bernard. That's another thing that happened as a result of these 2 groups coming together. And it felt like they were kind of posturing also with making our group of survivors, our heroes or our protagonists, a little stronger, sort of beefing them up, because we know we have this other shadowy group on the island, these others who they're going to have to deal with. So now we kind of boned up the core group a little bit, right? So they're a little stronger, maybe a little bit of more of a force to be reckoned with, but there's a lot of drama that goes on in order for them to get there over the course of the season. A lot happens. That was another thing, too, with meeting such an important character like Ana Lucia, and we find out her origins as an LA cop and that her mother was her boss, the police commissioner or whatever, that I found in this season, I understand what they're doing with the backstories and the flashbacks, right? We're following these characters, and the whole strategy, I think, with that is to make us, you know, elicit our sympathy a little more, make us more invested in the characters. But I really felt like you, Kyle, where it was like, I'm so invested. You've created such an immersive world and an intriguing situation on this island with so many questions and characters that we care about, that the flashbacks were an unneeded distraction. Like every time I heard that musical sting, that sort of very, I don't know, Game of Thrones-esque with it almost felt like the dragon fire sting that they do.
Right.
Like you hear that noise ramp up and you're like, oh shit, they're going to flashback. You were almost sorry because you want the story to propel on the island. You want to know what's going on now, but now they're taking you backwards. But I think that's part of the thing of bringing you along for the ride. They're not just going to keep spoon feeding you what you want to see minute by minute. And I realized in the show, like, that's a strategic thing to make you kind of half hating the flashbacks, because it's slowing down the core story on the island and helping you to savor it more. And maybe also giving you the time to ask more questions in your own head and suss it out yourself, or, come up with theories and try to figure it out on our own before they tip it off.
Right. I think that the flashbacks, if they serve a purpose for me, is just to remind the audience about the religiosity of how these people are all somehow interconnected with each other. At least that's how I would interpret it, as the religiosity, like the more faith-based stuff. As like Libby was in the mental institution with Hurley. She gave Desmond his boat. Desmond is, on this boat going around the world, ends up on the island. He lives with a guy who was a CIA agent that worked with Saeed. It goes on and on and on and on. Like Anna Lucia works with Jack's dad and all of the rest. And it's Desmond and Jack meet each other at the stadium when they're running. I think that's where it gets creepy to me, where I'm like, it's
so good, dude.
That's why it's so
interwoven.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, it's so funny how they're not more unsettled by it.
Yeah, that's another thing too. It's like you have to kind of suspend your disbelief a little bit with all right, get on with the story. But if this was happening in real life, they would be so freaked out. And the more connections that are explored, like Libby being in an institution, or Libby giving Desmond, saying, I have a boat, meeting in that coffee shop and giving him $4 for his cappuccino or whatever. Like, yeah, these characters are so intertwined and interwoven now, where I actually, and it's awesome for the story, but I actually worry how they're going to get out of this situation that they've created. I'm talking about the writers and the creators of the show. It's like, how can you possibly answer this? This goes beyond coincidence. There's something mystical or supernatural or something that beyond human belief or human comprehension at this point. How can you successfully make this work? I'm not sure, but it is from this. That's what I'm saying. By the end of season 2, it's like you're at that perfect point in the story now where there's intrigue. There's been enough payoff where how thoughtful it is, great characters that we're invested in. And maybe a supposedly evil corporation. Maybe there's something supernatural at play. So it's really kind of at its peak right now. And I'm just wondering how they could preserve that.
To talk about the others, which I'd like to get into, we first must talk about Henry Gale. And Cooper Bibaud wrote into us and said, question, can Dagan share his experience when it came to, he uses his real name here. So I'll just use his fake name because we don't know his name yet, right? In season 2,
it's Henry, as far as I know.
Right. Okay. So
yeah,
came to Henry being held captive. Did he trust his story? Doubt him. Go back and forth. I found the part to be highly engaging back in the day. See you in another life, brothers. I agree. I loved the hot air balloon, Henry Gale scene, like the whole arc. I am curious if you could put yourself back in the place over those episodes, what you thought about it as it evolved and introduced what will end up being a very important character to the show. Talk to me a little bit about Henry Gale.
It was a great part of the season. I mean, having this shady, great job by the actor, because you really don't know whether to trust this guy or not.
Yeah, that's Michael Emerson, I think. Yeah.
Brilliant performance. I mean, really, really well done. I mean, well cast. Kind of has a Kevin Spacey-esque thing going on, right? Yeah. With that whole thing, whether you can trust this guy or not. And, seemingly some of the characters have a lot of conviction, like Saeed, and I think Jack too, that this guy's not to be trusted. And then there's people I think Ana Lucia is a little bit of that mind too. And then there's characters like Locke who think maybe they could confide in this guy. Maybe this guy's on the up and up. And they play that whole thing out where they have him in captivity in the hatch over the course of many episodes. And we're wondering about it until that whole debacle where Michael lets him out and then frees him and then makes it look like Henry killed Ana Lucia and Libby and shot him during his escape or whatever. Awesome stuff. And then, of course, we find out by the end of the season, this guy is one of the leaders or the leader of this mysterious, still shadowy group of others living on the island. And we know all kinds of crazy things about them. Like, we don't know a lot, but we know like they wear fake beards. They make it look like they are more primitive, or, you know, they're more, what do you say? They're more of a force to be reckoned with than they're letting on, right?
Yeah, their village, I think, is a set. Like,
yeah, right, exactly, right. So it's they're putting up guises. They're making themselves seem like something that they're not. They're seemingly primitive, or they want to put off that charade, but they're more. They have more wherewithal.
They come off. I said to Micah that they come off to me as like the Lost Boys almost. Like,
yeah, that's a good proxy. Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, most of them are adults. So we met a few of them specifically too. We met Tom, who we meet in the first, the first, and I like Mrs. Clue specifically because she kind of starts asking some weird questions, suggests their connection to the Dharma Initiative. I think. You know, has Walt ever been somewhere where he's not supposed to be? Like, weird, like that's like kind of really unsettling. You know, how special he is, and how I think they kind of insinuate they're scared of him. They like give him back, you know. So but then you learn about a lot of the fake spirituality in the show too, like when Bernard goes to the Outback and they see the guy Feroz, who admits that he's a charlatan. It's, by the way, the same guy that sees Claire and and tries to like harass and stalk her to like do certain things because he sees it. So there's a lot of cool stuff there too. But yeah, the others create a really interesting dynamic because we also learn a little bit about them through the flashbacks that are conducted from revolving around Ethan. And do you have any thoughts on that character? And they're interested in the baby seemingly and injecting her with something. And
yeah, what was going on there too with that whole medical hatch and the thing with Claire? And you know, I had forgotten about this. Claire's whole 2-week capture. You know, she was gone. She was stolen from camp and she was gone for 2 weeks, and then really had virtually no memory of what happened when she came back. So those little memories returning to her and being experimented on with her baby still, you know, baby Aaron still in the belly and being injected painfully with the needle by that Ethan character. How much of that was real? How much of that was sort of, you know, conjured up? Was she tripping out? And the way it was presented in a very dreamlike, very horrific fashion, that was really interesting. But yeah, so many things going on. And I think with the others, it just kept reminding me, like, who are these people? Are they like intended guardians of this island, kind of under the guise that they're just castaways at some point too? And I like what you said earlier too, Kyle, about this seemingly endless nature of this island. Like maybe it dates back all the way to Egyptian times. And what's at play there? Was there always this Dharma Initiative? I don't know, almost like, I guess, a Masonic sort of secret society thing that was handed down from era to era, from century to century. And it used to be this thing in Egyptian times, and it used to be this thing back in the 1600s, and then it became the Dharma Initiative in the 20th century or whatever. Like it's really interesting to think maybe that's another thing at play here, where there's always been this thing at the root of just the existence of the world. And is that something for the good of the world? Is that something sort of insidious or malevolent? I'm not sure. So there's so much, and there's so many characters too. And then not only that, to add insult to injury, not only the sheer amount of characters they have to account for, but then when they start to be introduced as characters that have these ties, then it becomes even more complicated. And it's almost mean-spirited in a way for the audience, because it's like, how do I juggle all this? How do I account for all of this information? It almost necessitates, I think, repeated viewing. The problem with that is, and this is the nature of just entertainment, I think, in general, with repeated viewing, things get diluted. You lose that resonance of the first time experience or the excitement. But I am interested in going back because I think even the most clever watcher must know that they're missing a lot the first time around. And I'm not even sure how clever I am as an audience member. So it's like, it almost deems repeated viewing if you really want to try to wrap your head around what's going on here. I know I'm missing stuff as it's going, but I'm just enjoying the journey.
Yeah, totally. I feel the same way. And I've said in the past, when I view things again, or I'm able to play a game again or whatever, you're able to focus on the negative spaces because the main what's happening. You don't have to pay attention to the dialogue or the plot or moving forward. You kind of have an idea. And so you can kind of look in the background and see what books are on the shelf, or look for a character that might be there, or something you might have missed, or a glance, or I love that kind of shit too. And a lot of shows that take advantage of that, I think, are some of the finest shows that exist. But I wanted to ask about one more mystery before we talk about some of the characters more specifically. And I wanted to ask you about the map. This is a thing I totally forgot about. And you learn through a flashback that Kelvin and Desmond were working on this map. That it's actually one of the coolest things you learn is that they learned how to manipulate the machine, like the computer, to go into like lockdown. And then they were painting on the insides of the doors, like these secret things, and they were doing it together. And I like that when you learn that Desmond, before the flashback, Desmond looks behind him and there's a crushed filing cabinet that's been there the entire time that you never really thought about. And it's like a flashback to how they used to keep the doors open. And so I was wondering what you thought about the question mark map and what it shows. It seemed there is I don't know if you went and looked it up. You can look up a zoomed in version of it and read.
Oh, you can?
Yeah. And there's it's pretty interesting. So, but based on what you saw, what do you think?
Oh, that's interesting. These are rabbit holes I could find myself going down, but I'm really trying to be a purist with this time around. Mostly because I'm afraid of spoilers.
Yeah, totally. I would agree.
Season.
Yeah, just be patient. I mean, I'm doing the same. That's what I'm doing. The same thing.
But that is interesting. That's tempting. But the map thing is really another kind of component of this season that really draws you in, because they're painting this map in blacklight ink or blacklight paint, very 70s, by the way, on the inside of the hatch. They obviously, Kelvin, Desmond, whoever came before, obviously have some sort of concern or some sort of information. But what's interesting to me about it is not only that characters like Mr. Echo and Locke have some sort of interest or knowledge about it and want to learn more about this crazy, information, but the fact that if these people, Desmond and Kelvin and the like, were working for this company, this Dharma Initiative, and we know that it was all about being surveilled and being watched, and the whole thing was some sort of analog for research, that weren't they being watched doing this? And was just this mystery or painting this map or having this information, did that fly in the face of the work that they were doing for this foundation? Or was it part of it? Or were they given this autonomy or supposed autonomy in order to do things like this? And that was part of the Dharma Initiative's research, was like, what are these people going to do in these spaces, given that they can't go outside, they're tasked with doing this research, being together, the cabin fever, whatever. Like, how are these people going to react to being tasked with these jobs? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's very, very interesting. It seems like they started to play out what the map meant when Locke and Mr. Echo found the question mark inscribed in the soil at that one spot in the island. but I'm still, there's still a lot of mystery there for me and a lot of question mark. Well,
that was the legend, right? Like, as far as this is the proximity, the question mark is to all these other places. So that's how you like find them all.
That's how they figured that out.
Right.
Was some sort of spatial knowledge. But yes, dude, super, super interesting. And again, I come back to that Kelvin character who kind of seemed like a throwaway character with Saeed and the whole Iraqi adventure. But then even a character like that, who you think is going to be this momentary figure in the story, comes back, is, brought full circle and brought back into the story in a real way. And then so many question marks again. No pun
intended. Yeah, we're going to have more fun in the coming seasons about the Dharma Initiative. Let's talk about some of the characters. We can talk some of the flashbacks if we want. I kind of want to leave it to you. Are there any of these new characters that you want to dive deeper into? We have Mr. Echo, we have Ana Lucia, Desmond, etc. There's so many that we can't talk about everyone. I assume let's dive into Mr. Echo, I guess, because you said that you were interested in him. We learned that he was a drug runner. He's technically a Catholic priest, and his younger brother was a Catholic priest. We learned that he kind of assumed this alter ego that became somewhat of a permanent fixture, I guess, of being this violent thug, but he did it to kind of save his brother from having to do this horrible crime for a local gang.
Love that.
So that was pretty interesting. And then he comes to the island, and what's interesting about Echo is he has these various ups and downs with faith, and seems to be driven very much like Locke. Like, he's the plane's tail and Locke character, like the mystic character. And yeah, he becomes a pretty central character as the season moves on. And I like him a lot too, just like you do. What do you make of Mr. Echo?
Yeah, great performance. Really intriguing character from the outset. I love the Nigerian background. I love the Catholic background. And I love showing his backstory early on, where he joins this group of thugs, essentially terrorists in that country, this sort of drug ring, in order to save his brother from doing it, which is, and then he gets pulled in, and as an adult is still very much involved in this drug running ring, this heroin ring. And despite trying to save his brother's kind of brought along into the fold and murdered because of the whole thing. He gets brought up on the plane that ends up crashing with all the drugs, the Virgin Mary statues on the island, another very sort of mysterious tie to these characters' pasts and their proxies, their friends and their families. And I love meeting Mr. Echo for the first time because he seems like Ana Lucia's enforcer, right? He's the one who kind of knocks out Sawyer and Michael and Jin on the beach and throws them into the pit in the sand, and sort of they're the captives, and kind of becomes this, this gentle giant type character, for lack of a better word. And the friendship that he forms with Locke eventually, and then sort of becomes part of the core group of survivors. It's not just the tail section. You're kind of happy to see him join the team because he's somebody who could take care of himself. And he's also very smart. But he gets kind of sucked into the mystery of the island too. And again, it was very kind of, there was a lot of gray area for me in the end too, where it's like, wait, is Echo dead? Like, I don't even know. So I was happy to see that at least he continues into the beginning of the third season, which is kind of cool. But a great character. And again, sort of took that place of John Locke for me, is like, wow, this character is really intriguing. I don't even mind going back to his flashbacks because I want to learn more about this guy. He's an interesting dude.
And we had brought up Ana Lucia several times. It's interesting to see Michelle Rodriguez here towards the beginning of her career, post Fast and the Furious. But she's pretty good in this, I think. What do you think about her relationship with Jack's dad specifically? I find that whole arc so strange, how she's in Australia to be like his bodyguard, and as we'd mentioned, and I don't know, it's her happenstance seems to be most unusual in that regard. Like, as far as we know now, her connections are more tenuous to some of these people than otherwise seen. But I liked having another female, like powerful, strong female, because there really is only, in that regard, Kate. And so it feels the show's very masculine And I felt like it needed some more like powerful femininity. And when she shot by Michael, I had totally forgotten about that. I was like, oh yeah, fuck.
Man.
Like that's so weird. Like I assume maybe she was maybe a little expensive or something. I don't know. I don't know if she was always going to be on the show for that long, but it was a bummer to see her go. And I guess it's an interesting way for us to connect to the whole situation with Michael. That arc frustrated me so much. And Micah and I were talking about this because why didn't he just tell them? Did you think about that at all? He came in, he's captured. They give him these instructions and they send him back. And it's like, why doesn't he come back and be like, listen, these people told me to come back with these people, this list of folks. This is the situation, blah, 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 and try to work something out instead of being so underhanded. He ends up killing. And so go to them and be like, they want us to release Henry Gale. That frustrated me because that none of that had to happen. And it's all through Michael's like bullheadedness and stupidity. I don't know if you like played around with that idea in your mind or not.
Yeah, you really hate that character by the end of the season. I mean, he becomes straight up evil. I definitely didn't see that coming, although I think Michael always displayed a certain amount of gray to his personality. I don't think he was straight up ever good, but he's driven by wanting to get his child back. I get that. And the other thing at play, I think, and I understand what you're saying, it might not be enough, but if you have Jack as the leader of this group and you want to do something outside of Jack's jurisdiction, you're going to have an obstacle in Jack because he's obstinate. He's very set in his ways. He wants to do things his way. Again, I think that's the gray area of Jack. He's not really that willing to negotiate. He thinks he has their good at the heart of things. His heart's in the right place. But that might have been the thing with Michael. It was just getting around Jack. That those things had to take place. And also with the Ana Lucia character, man, I really thought they were posturing to make this a core character, a Sawyer, a Kate, a Jack. I really thought they were doing that. And again, they were just the showrunners and the powers that be were just like, nope, she's dead. And again, in a very unceremonious fashion. Same thing with Libby, who you think, by a thread may hold on, but she doesn't, which I love that whole thing though, with Michael committing this atrocity only if those characters who he meant to murder actually die, will that be successful? Because if the knowledge gets out, and of course Libby in Libby's last breath saying Michael, and Jack taking that as concern rather than pointing a finger at like, no, this is the guy who did it. Super interesting. The Ana Lucia character, I mean, yeah, I could understand Michelle Rodriguez, mid-aughts, Fast and the Furious, the Letty character, right? Dominic's love interest in that. There's something about her flavor, like her brand of acting, that permanent scowl, that permanent sneer. She has a very like bad girl vibe. Her, not just her look, but her attitude. But I like, it made sense. Like, yeah, LA cop, Latina, right? Like that whole thing. I like the whole dynamic with her mom being her boss. And also the thing of her committing this atrocity in her past, like murdering somebody in cold blood, but it was a criminal that nearly murdered her, that nearly took her life. So her exacting vengeance, and then this cop that fell from grace and then becoming this bodyguard for this disgraced doctor, again, tied in with Christian, tied in with Jack. Now, like, again, all these characters coming together and having this common bond, right? This common thread running through them. But that was the thing with me, is like, you're getting to know this character. She's just introduced I guess she was introduced technically briefly when she meets Jack in season 1, but we're just starting to get to know her. She seems like she's going to be an important character or a core character, and she's killed off. That was probably the most memorable thing for me with that character. Does make sense though. If you think of the story moving forward, what was she going to bring to the equation that another character maybe couldn't? So if you think about it from a writing standpoint, it is kind of logical. Do we really need her? Or is it better as a payoff that Michael murdered these characters in cold blood? He's really the bad guy going into season 3. He's, he got his way. He saved his son, but at great cost.
My boy. And I love how Yeah. I love how the kid is getting older and older in real life. So he's clearly so much older. He's a year older, clearly, but it's that age where it's so obvious, and he like jumps into his arms, but he's like almost like a grown boy, like a grown.
I think
man.
they were saying that's why they did what they did with the Walt character and kind of made him pop in these dreamlike, nightmarish flashbacks and stuff like that, or talking backwards to Shannon in the woods briefly as this vision, because the character in real life, the actor was growing at such an alarming clip that was like, we can't keep showing this guy.
Yeah.
And shout out to Harold Parinol, dude. I think he brought the acting chops that I'm used to seeing from him in this second season. He's a lot better. And I think it's just that soapy film of the first season where I think that's what the characters were given. And in that getting to know you sort of way of like, all right, these are the intros. We got to get to know the characters and stuff. I think they really found their footing with the second season as far as tone and presenting something. I don't want to say grittier because that's so rote and that's just a common description, but something that felt a little more substantive, if you will.
Sure. And shout out to his role in Oz, and he was in Romeo and Juliet, the mid-90s Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, so good in that, dude. Mercutio, yeah.
By the way, I have to get this out of me before it's something Micah and I have been joking about with Sawyer. Is Micah was just making me like hysterically laughing because they were fighting over pills, and she was like, "What if they were fighting over boner pills?" Like on the but then we were doing the impression of like, "Give me my boner pills, doc." You know, that kind of.
I love that campy performance, man. It's just working for, I don't know. I guess it just works with the character who he is, that sort of ex-con man, suave, always has a diss, always with the clever quip, but it just Southern tinge to the accent. But I don't handsomeness. I don't know. Yeah. It just works. It just, I really fallen in love with that character. By the way, made the character sort of push the envelope with making that character a little more hateable by squishing the tree frog in his hand. I was really shocked at that.
Yeah.
Because I felt like they were bringing that character along like, okay, I'm starting to like this dude. And then he kind of doubled down on the evilness with the frog moment.
Yeah, we learn in flashbacks, we learn quite a bit about him. And it's so crazy, like the meta level of con that he gets into, the level upon level upon level.
That was amazing.
I liked his flashbacks a lot and you feel bad. Like you think there's like multiple times where you think he's getting out of it, and so on and so forth. And then he just ends up screwing that woman over anyway.
I'll tell you what that reminded me of. That con and like you're saying, the multi-layered fashion of that made me realize two things. I could never be a con man, and I would be so easily fooled by a con man.
Oh,
like,
totally.
3 layers in, I'd be so turned around. You know what I mean? Let alone the other 5 layers to come. It's like
totally, dude. Like I would never a half a layer down. I'd be like, I can't do this to you. I'm sorry. And I would apologize. And then on the other hand, I'd be sucked in. Totally into it.
Absolutely.
It was crazy. I loved that about how deep and the subterfuge went. It's pretty crazy. It never goes. It's so deep. It's so double and triple crossing that you just never even know when it quite ends. Which I like.
Where does it end?
And then I loved the flashbacks with Locke and Katie Seagal. Shout out Katie Seagal. Awesome. I was interested to see what you thought of when she popped up because I really like her. I think she's awesome.
She's so good, dude.
Yeah. She's
such a good actor. You think of her, listen, we all know you can't look at her without thinking of Peg Bundy. It's iconic. And that, for me, that dates back to junior high school. I mean, This was going on for a long time, 7th grade or 6th grade or something. But you think of her turns in Futurama, Sons of Anarchy, wherever she pops up, she's so good. And the fact that she could have been Peg Bundy for the better part of a decade, 11 years, whatever she did it for, and then could go on and do these roles and sort of, it was so cool to see her pop up that I was so sorry that she was only in a few episodes because, she's great. She's just really great. That's another thing with this formula that I think we talked about with season 1, where just by the nature of these flashbacks and whatever they do with these characters and their origin stories, you could put in any number. I mean, Brad Pitt could pop up. You know what I mean? Who knows who's going to pop up? I love that just as a movie mark or, an entertainment mark to see like these people. Who's John Hamm? Who's going to pop up? I don't know. It's exciting, and I know it's not the intention, but for somebody like me, it's like, oh man, who are we going to meet in season 3? This is going to be amazing. I only feel bad for the characters that they don't have a longer stay on the show. But yeah, it was really cool to see John Locke and this character who took an interest in him and said, you got to break free of this obsession with your parents, specifically your father, who are doing you wrong, to the tune of like, working a con with his dad and flying in the face of his engagement with this woman who really loved him. And really kind of talk about subterfuge, right? Like really kind of took himself out. You know what I mean? Just took himself out at the knees by still trying to elicit some sort of relationship with his father who does not give a shit about him. It's so sad of a story to see Locke go through that. Again, probably one of the flashbacks that I didn't mind because it was so interesting and so emotional. It's like, wow, this guy can't break free, even though his dad literally stole his kidney and disappeared. And then literally said to him, like, I don't give a shit about you. Like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I fooled you into taking your internal organ. And then sort of can't break free of that. It's unbelievable. There's
something weird here, though, about this. I'm glad you brought that up because there is some weird thing I thought about with the dad and Locke, which is it's insinuated that the dad is obscenely wealthy, right?
Yes.
He has like a guy at the gate, like a security guard or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
He steals $700,000 from some, like,
that was weird.
And then disappears. Like,
and was going to have $500,000 after his payout to his son.
It's like that. What? And then and he's like, I got to go to the airport. And I said aloud, I'm like, you're going to the airport with $500,000 in your bag. Like they're not going to notice that. No one's going to know.
Here's the thing that I thought of. I thought of that same thing.
Okay.
And again, I'm a big suspension and disbelief guy. Take me along for a fun ride, whatever. But I was hung up by that too. But maybe they were saying that this guy, that's how he earned his fortune, by doing these cons, by doing these $1 million cons or whatever. That's the only thing I could think of, Kyle. Or else, yeah, that's a problem.
Right? Yeah, because his funeral was empty. Like no one was there. No one cared. Right.
Love that.
Which is very dark to think about. And, I always think about that. It's like, who will be at my funeral?
I think about that a lot too. Is that weird? I think about, what I think about specifically? The line of cars. How long is my line of cars going to be? Going from the wake to the funeral. Is that a morbid thought? Yes. I've never talked about this with anybody before. But yeah, I think about that. Like how many cars are going to be running with their headlights on? Right? I hope a lot. Could be 3. I don't know.
Yeah. I remember actually this really embarrassing situation happened in San Francisco when I was with my ex-girlfriend Cheryl many years ago. And we accidentally like crossed into a funeral procession.
That's not good. You know what you do in that case? Flip on the day runners, man. Just blend in. Now you don't have the sticker on. So she was just, I don't know what it was, but then a cop like on a motorcycle like rode up and like was like, you gotta get out of here, whatever. Disgraced you.
It was probably in like 2009, and I like, yeah, you'll never forget that. I was like, oh my god, I wasn't even really familiar with that whole thing at that time. I was like, what was I at that time? Like 20? I guess I should have been, but like 25 or whatever. I don't think I've ever been in a funeral procession.
You know what though? It's easy if you're not paying attention. This is not to get off on a tangent, but especially with the advent of daytime running lights, which almost every new car has, right? That people's headlights are on in the daytime. That's generally a thing now. This isn't the 70s anymore. We have to put them on. So it's easy to get. I think I've done that. I think I've definitely done. I think I'm gonna take a flyer on this one. No, I won't. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I think I've done it on purpose. I think, especially living on Long Island, I remember at the time living at grandma's on Long Island in my early 20s and being in Nassau County and just the nature of how busy it was there and just wanting to get from A to B, wherever I was going. I think there's a couple of times I cut through on purpose. Like maybe went through the intersection where I shouldn't, you know what I mean? Where it's like,
well, but it's just, I don't know.
It's terrible.
We don't have to get into it. We don't have to get into it. I shouldn't. Don't be too offended though if your funeral procession isn't as long. I mean, we're more green as we get older. Maybe we'll all teleport. Maybe there won't even be
carpooling.
Yeah. It's good shit.
I'm going to tell you right now, don't carpool for my thing. I want a long line of cars. I'm old school. I was born in the 70s. right?
Okay.
I want one person to a car.
We're going to
In
get...
fact, I want the kids to take the extra car. Like Declan and Lilia don't technically drive yet, but they should for that.
Right.
It's terrible because I'm saying it like it's going to happen 3 weeks from now or something.
No, it's not going to happen. I was actually talking about you yesterday because I was like, we have to... Your 50th birthday, like I said, is not this one, but the next one. And something's got to be done about that. I don't know.
Something does have to be done.
I don't know what, like someone has to do something. So I have to step up and I think I execute on a plan of some sort for you.
Wow.
All right, my friend. A few other things that people wrote in about. Kenneth Kopnick says, like a lot of shows, season 2 is where Lost finds its feet for me. Echo is one of my favorite characters, and getting the tail section story was a great move in the story. Is the Libby and Hurley stuff the saddest stuff to happen in the show yet? I feel so bad for him. It's very confusing because this is where reality hits television, I guess, for me in some sense, or just fiction generally is.
Okay.
Hurley says something I think really factual. He says, why would a girl like you want something to do with a guy like me? And the unfortunate reality is that's true. Like, I hate to say it, it's sad to say, but have you ever really seen like Libby and Hurley together in person or anything like that? It just seemed like very forced. And when you see her and again, I'm not really remembering what happened, is like when you go backwards and see that she was there and like at the hospital staring at him and all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, well, was this some sort of setup or something like that? It's sad for me to think that, because like you want good things for Hurley. Nothing ever good happens for Hurley and all of the rest. But there is a reinforcing principle that, that suggests that is kind of a little goofy in my mind. And maybe that's just wrongheaded, but that's what felt weird to me about it. And of course it's a fucking great tragic downfall, but I couldn't help, I guess what I'm saying is I couldn't help but feel like Hurley was being taken advantage of in some way, or being like preyed upon, because those connections, she knows him, and she's not saying it, or she doesn't maybe remember me. I don't know if that's the insinuation.
Maybe.
But anyway,
she didn't seem to have her marbles back in the institution days, right?
Right, exactly. Like, but she's in and out, and the timeline, like it does, and she's a clinical psychologist.
That's a good point.
So I don't know, man. It's like, and also he doesn't know her at all. During the funeral, he's like, she was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, one of those. I'm like, dude, she was a psychologist. They're two very different things. She would have actually been way more useful on the island if she was a psychiatrist, because she would have went to some med school.
And that's a shrink,
right?
Not the psychologist,
right?
Psychiatrist is shrink, right?
Okay. Right. And I mean, I always thought that too, because he calls her a shrink, but I'm like, I don't think you call psychologist shrink. I think you call psychiatrist shrinks.
Exactly. Head shrinker.
I know that I have probably similar problems, but I am always puzzled by this idea of getting those two words confused. I'm like, is it that hard to keep them? Is it really that hard to know the difference between psychologist and psychiatrist? Like, people make it out to be this like huge. I'm like, guys, it's like psych. Forget it.
No, it's true. Somebody with very middling intelligence like me should say it, because you're smarter than me. So I would say of very mediocre intelligence, I'm still telling you it's not hard. So take my word for it. It's not tough. It's not too tough. The Hurley thing is interesting, Kyle, because obviously he's this lovable bloke. Everybody loves this character. And he is very likable. But here's what's interesting to me about Hurley, just Hurley in general, without even the Libby character entering the equation, is that despite winning tens of millions of dollars, right, in this lotto, it's still this character that's so sad. He's so burdened by his troubles, by his emotional baggage, his anxieties, his perception of bad luck. It's almost as if he doesn't have a monetary fortune, right? It's like, it's the least of him. He's struggling with his weight. He's overeating, all these things. It also, the Libby Hurley thing also reminded me of the thing we talked about in season 1, where it was like, is it a natural thing for people to pair off, right? You have the Kate Sawyer, Jack love triangle. You have Charlie, Claire. You have, yeah, obviously you have married couples like Rose and Bernard. Now you have the Libby Hurley thing, where it's like characters pairing off, but maybe that is the natural thing to do. And maybe, and not even to be cruel, because I have seen couples who physically it doesn't seem to compute. And it works both ways. And it could be one of the people who happen to be overweight, or one's just better looking than the other. I have seen that before, although obviously it's a little more rare if we're being real about it, right? But maybe it's this type of thing. It's not very PC to say, but in this situation where it's like, for all intents and purposes, in all likelihood, we're never getting off this island. So in this case, it's not in real life where you have the pick of the litter, right? If you're Libby, right? You're not living in a city. You're not living in society. You're on this deserted island and you're probably never going to be rescued. Is that the thing at play? Which is not very interesting to say, but is that more of a realistic way of saying, okay, she shows this interest and maybe this friendship or taking an interest in Hurley or having sympathy for him sort of blossoms into a romance where maybe that wouldn't normally happen given normal circumstances.
Yeah.
So maybe it's something like that.
Well, that's what I was kind of getting at too, was it's not to say it's right. It's just that, you know, in my experience, it's like a lot of women or a lot of people, like, it goes both ways. Totally. It totally goes both ways. I mean, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I would never be with a woman that was as big as Hurley is. Like that to me, like that couldn't compute to me, because it has to start with some sort of physical attraction first, right? And if you want to be with someone like that and you get to know them as friends, I'll be friends with you, right? But that's something that's a personal preference. I think a lot of people share that. And so that's just been my own experience, is like, I look at Hurley and I look at Libby and I'm like, well, someone like Libby in the real world probably would never, unfortunately, give Hurley a chance to ever get to know him very well. Yeah.
That's well said. Yeah, that's very well said.
And it's a tough thing to talk about. We don't mean to sound like dickheads, of course. I'm examining it from the realistic societal aspect, not from being I'm not a beautiful person myself. So
I hear that. Now, it's very personal. And some people are attracted to people that are larger than them or look different than them in some way. Blonde, maybe you're attracted to a different race. Who knows? Maybe if it comes down to height, religion, who the hell knows? To each his own. Live and let live, right?
Well, I just hate when people put on pretenses like, oh, I would be with anyone and do it. You know, like it's what's inside that counts and all of that. And I'm like, certainly what's inside counts more than anything. But there's got to be some sort of barrier. Like I'm just being straight with you. I wouldn't be with a 400-pound woman.
Sure. For you, it's like, yeah. And physical attraction is often, not always, I guess, but that's often the first thing. That's the first layer, right? The physical attraction. That's how you notice somebody or it catches your eye, or again, I can't think of a situation specifically, but that's not always the case, but that's often the case. That's often been the case in history. That's the first step, in other words. So yeah, that is interesting. You know what I feel like with the Libby character too, Kyle? I feel like maybe a little bit of a wasted character, like felt a little bit expendable, tying her into Desmond and the boat race and winning the purse and everything like that. And I guess in that formula, sort of getting tied into the Penelope thing too. But other than that, and maybe the first time I felt in that coffee shop with Desmond and Libby, maybe the first time I kind of felt like this with Libby in the mental institution too. Maybe the first time I felt on the show that they were rushing to squeeze something in there last minute. Whereas like, let's make this character a little more important before we kill her off. It smacked to me of that ever so slightly, but that's maybe the first time in the show where I felt that sensation, where it was like they were kind of shoehorning in something to make it a little more relevant.
Dig, I have one last question for you.
Sure.
The audience. Jefferson Wentworth wrote in. Said, hello, brothers. Would you keep pushing the button with Mr. Echo, or would you follow the box man and destroy the button? What would you want to do with the button, knowing what they knew? Here's my thing with this.
Yeah.
Is they conclusively know that something is up. It's not some sort of figment of their imagination. There is a magnet at the center of the hatch. And they show it time and time again. And it's like I said earlier, things melt down enough with Desmond where he knows that this thing is fucked if you don't press the button. So he has that knowledge that we are really not given until the very end of the second season. But what frustrates me about it is that they have minutes to press the button after the countdown goes down. So it's like you're pushing it beyond the limit, and then you realize like things are shaking, pots are flying towards the magnet. At that point, I'd be like, all right, putting the numbers in, like let's just do it. Like the proof's in the pudding. We've pushed this far enough. That was what was a little weird to me about it. So I think I would keep pressing the button. But the thing is that I think the device for them to, in the writing, for them to destroy the computer means that they can never have that recollection. Like, because that does answer that question. It's like, well, why wouldn't you do it? And it's like, because Locke destroyed the computer. Otherwise, they probably would have done that. So, what do you make about that? And would you press the button?
Yeah, man, I think I would be a mark for the button. I mean, I just think of myself, and you and I have discussed this in the past with religion. Not that I don't feel, personally, I'm a Roman Catholic. I was raised that way. I held on to my religion, and I still have my struggles, right? I still have my ups and downs, my peaks and valleys. But I will say, in all honesty, I have to kind of wear my heart on my sleeve here. There's been periods of my life where I feel like I'm going through the motions with it. And there is that sort of mantra at the center of my head where it's like, well, it doesn't hurt to do it, right? It doesn't hurt to just go through the motions for a little while, because on the other end of things, you think as a Catholic, and this is not for everybody, but for me, it's like, well, I don't want to go to hell, right? So it's like not doing it, that could be the outcome. Doing it, right? It's not the right way to look at religion. It's the complete wrong way to look at your faith and your spirituality and your spiritual center and core and everything. But for me, honestly, I have been, and probably the last time I felt that way was not too long ago, to be honest with you. So I'm that guy who would rather just keep an even keel and just kind of not take the risk. I'm not a big risk taker. I'm not a gambler, right? So for me, I have to say, in all honesty, I would probably sit there every 108 minutes and hit this button, even before we had the knowledge that a catastrophe would take place had we not done that. It wasn't just some experiment to see how much we could handle or how much pressure we could do before the pot boils over. But I will say that given this situation, if I was in this reality, I would be extremely curious what would happen if I didn't do it. Like, I would be haunted by that, because I think I'm a very open-minded person, human being, and there would always be that nagging question. It would be more so than the average bear. Like, I would be really haunted by it. And I think the temptation for me would be interesting, because I don't know, man, there's something in not knowing that is hard for me to bear, I think, just in general. And something like that, something so important. It's interesting how the different characters are affected by it, because if you think of the character of Jack, for instance, and his exploration with developing some sort of humanity or sympathy or gathering a little bit of a bedside manner by way of Christian, right? We see his journey he's kind of cold. He's a great doctor. He's skillful, but there's really that iciness that he learns how to be more human when dealing with his patients. But yet he's a mark for that keyboard, man. Like, he wants that shit put in every time, every 108 minutes, and that's it. So it's interesting how the characters' personalities are more complex, right? You can't kind of paint these characters into a corner. There's a lot of gray. And I think it makes the characters really nuanced. And I think that's even more on display in season 2, and I think that's what makes the show so good. And the performances and the writing, everything's really the mystery and the Twilight Zone, a little bit of horror in there, all good. But I think the characters are really what makes it great. And I like the way each one has the philosophy about this thing at the center of their experience on this island. Now, this is up until the end of season 2. This is this is the most important thing. Their lives sort of revolve around this. I worry about that keyboard, man. Is that 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42? Those numbers going to wear out. They only got the one keyboard. I would start worrying about that.
I always think that as well. Yeah, it's like watching it. It's just what's so strange about it is like, why do you have to type it in? And that's like what it gets to. It's like, why isn't this just automated? That's what it gets, the whole psychological experiments or the insinuation of the psychological experiment. And there's a lot, man. There's a lot to get into here. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to before we go?
No, I think we did a pretty good job covering it. I really, really enjoyed it. That was, to me, this this whole season takes the look of hearing that sting, that flashback sting, that gathering fireball. It's like, oh no, not the sting. Because I want to know, like, I want things to progress on the island. I want answers. Now we got hot air balloons and contemporary food drops and different hatches to deal with. That one hatch, the other's hatch, which was like the fake hatch, you know, it had the facade, but nothing inside. I originally thought that was a hatch that they had blocked in, like that they had sealed off themselves.
Oh, I see.
But I think you're right, though.
You're right. Maybe that is what it is. I thought it was just a fake. Maybe you're right. I don't know. I always just thought it was fake.
I'm not sure. I'm not too sure about that, but that's interesting to think about. And a lot of questions going into season 3. A lot of questions going into season 3. Oh, here's what I wanted to ask you going out as we close the conversation. Is there something going on now? We end on Walt and Michael sailing away to their coordinates that Henry gives them. We end with the burlap hoods being put over Sawyer, Jack, and Kate on the pier by the others. They're there. Hurley's let go back to the village and tell them never to fuck with us, type of thing. These other 3 they're ours now. As they're getting those hoods pulled over, Jack and Kate exchange glances, and it seems like Sawyer is not really a part of it. Do they have a plan? Was there a plan? Was there some sort of contingency plan between Jack and Kate at the close, like some sort of escape plan? I don't know. Did you get that from that exchange of looks, or?
Yeah, I don't know that I don't know.
That was my big thing. It was like, I love Michael and Jack sort of looking at each other as Michael sails away, that glare at each other.
Yeah, to me, it seemed like all knowing glances. So, I can see that.
And maybe, wait a second. So maybe even Michael's part of this?
No. I mean, knowing in the sense that like you and I know how I feel about you. You know what I'm feeling when I'm looking at you right now. It's like the fulfillment of the to Kate, it would be like the fulfillment of like, oh God, here, see, like it backfired.
No, that makes sense. I see what you mean by that. Yeah.
Who knows though? I have no idea.
But we'll see. We got another, that was 24 episodes of goodness. I don't know how many episodes is in season 3, but I'm looking forward to it.
I think they get a little shorter from here. Especially because the writer's strike starts around now too.
Oh, that's right.
So
that's funny how much that plays into the show, into KnockBack. That's come up before too, which is interesting.
And 2008 I think is when that happens. 2008. So I think that might be maybe season 4 more so.
Yeah, we're not
one of the seasons
off.
I think was split in 2 because of that. Like it stopped. And
it's okay.
It was good that happened though. Writers were getting fucking abused hardcore.
Really,
with not getting the money that they deserved for the things they wrote.
Yeah,
it's always so funny to me. It's like everyone talks about the actors and actresses, and it's like, what about the people that wrote it? They're much more interesting. They're much more interesting to me than the people that acted it. But that's cool. All right, Dave. Let's end this episode of KnockBack as we do each one with a dad joke.
All right, I got a dad joke about the Queen. Now listen. Too soon? Maybe. No. Listen to me. The Queen, God bless. I hope everything goes well over there. King Charles, 70 years, the Queen. That's amazing, right? Mm-hmm. She was coronated when like mom and dad were like 2.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's insanity. When I watched The Crown on Netflix, which I highly recommend, and it's crazy when you think about how long she was just how many things she was there for, like actually the Queen for.
It's insane.
It's like the Korean War, for instance, she was the Queen for.
Perfect example.
The missile crisis, the moon landings, Vietnam, like that far back. So yeah, it's RIP. I mean, listen, I think monarchy's goofy. I that's just my thing. I think it's just a strange thing. We're American. We don't understand it, but it's not a personal thing. She was clearly a great woman, an iconic woman. What I read about her was someone wrote something like she wasn't an idol, she was an icon, and they made the difference of saying like she was just steady and just there and like reliable like a rock. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that. So R.I.P.
Yeah.
Very interesting woman.
Yeah, to carry yourself that way with such humanity and such, charisma and everything about her, like over those decades, besides being a part of the royal family dating back 96 years, that's insane. But yeah, being an active queen for 70 years, that's insanity. So God bless. But Brian Henninger, our friend, who else sent me this via via Instagram or Twitter. Kyle, Brian says, with the Queen's death, I guess this puts Charles in charge of our days and our nights. Nights with a KN.
Love it. That's a good one.
So good. That's an innocuous. That's harmless. Right? I mean,
yeah, and I like that it's like 3 layers deep as well, which is good. Just like Lost.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, RIP to the Queen and to our British listeners. I know it's I'm always surprised when I look at polling about it's not a popular opinion to want to get rid of the monarchy in Britain. It's like not popular at all.
Oh, that's not a popular opinion?
No. It's like, there's like a party dedicated to it and there's, a good amount of people that are into it, but it's not a majority position or anything like that. No.
That's interesting. I mean, whether you support the monarchy or think it's antiquated or want to move on, like it doesn't matter. Like you said, it's about the person. Like she was a lovely person and so historically important. And of course we love our England.
Oh, of course.
Those are our peeps. Those are our brothers and sisters.
Our frangs.
Our frangs.
All right. Let's get that.
All right. Enjoy football, my friend.
Thank you. It's time to go.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand Media. KnockBack, Sacred Symbols, Defining Duke. We couldn't do without you. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye. KnockBack, a retro and nostalgia podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and the Philadelphia suburbs, USA. The show was conceived by and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Dagan Moriarty. KnockBack's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including KnockBack, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.